Hey everyone, welcome to Charmy's Garden. I wanted to show you guys around the garden a little bit more, hoping to show you some greater context to the garden, see what kind of projects that I have going around. So yeah, I hope you guys will stick around, hope you guys will enjoy it. So for some context, I'm in Southern California, zone 10A, and I've been gardening for about 5 years or so, maybe a bit before that, but pretty on and off. So yeah, about 5 years of gardening. One of the things that I'm planning on doing with this garden and that I have already started to implement is for things to naturalize. So a lot of these plants I don't plant specifically. This is spring onions, for example. Didn't plant these. I think I propagated and planted some spring onions maybe 3 years ago, and I've let the seed fall naturally. I have scattered some seed, but I just kind of allow it to grow where it wants to grow. I'm doing the same with a lot of these plants, so you'll see a lot of repeating characters here. I got some calendula. Every time I see some seed pods, I love to pick them up and toss them around. Sometimes I do a little bit more than that to try to make sure they get germinated. Yeah. Borage is another one of those plants. So this is almost a weed at this point, but I love it. I'll show you guys some more footage of the borage later. That's in a lot more mature stage. It's a great mulching plant. It's a great pollinating plant. Got some nasturtium here, got some lavender, some Thai basil, nasturtiums. This here is an almond tree. So it's maybe about 3 years old at this point. I'm not expecting almonds for, at the very least, another 2 years. But I've heard it can take up to about 10 years to really start producing almonds. Fig tree right here, just starting to leaf out for the spring. This has been giving us fruit for at least 3 years. It's always a reliable performer here. Artichokes are the same. These are almost a weed at this point as well. I have artichokes all over the garden, which it's a wonderful problem to have. Picked some of the artichokes, the first harvest, not too long ago. So I'm excited about the other ones coming in. Fennel is another one of these naturalized plants. Daikon radish, same. I'm letting this go to seed. This is probably going to be the final year that I don't harvest much and that I just let go to seed. I'm thinking next year I will reap the benefits of all the years that things have gone to seed. Got some sage over here, got some rosemary, got some serrano peppers. Here's the borage I was talking about earlier. These are much more mature borage. This might even be just one borage plant. It might be two in there. It's hard to tell at this point. But I let that grow wild. This is supposed to be a pathway. It's growing over it. And at this point, I don't mind it too much. I'm letting things behave how they want. I pruned it back just a bit to allow this calendula to grow here. I've also been propagating some yarrow all around the garden. Yarrow is a great ground cover. It grows like crazy. It spreads. It's walkable, so it's pretty hard to kill it. And it's a great pollinator as well once it gets mature. If you walk on it, it might not be able to get mature enough to pollinate, but the main thing is it looks nice. It's better than grass in my opinion. Here's our pond. It's a bit low right now. I think mainly due to evaporation. It's not completely sealed yet. There's no plastic liner in it whatsoever. There's only bentonite clay that I'm sealing with. So I've been sealing it this is about a year old pond. So it still has a couple years probably left to go until it's fully mature. But I think it's coming along pretty nicely. A lot of things growing in. A lot of volunteers here. Some things that I've planted, such as this lily-like plant that propagates pretty readily. I'm hoping to get some elderberry propagated around the pond. Elderberries tend to like wet conditions, and they're easy to propagate. Not to say that I'm always successful propagating elderberry, but here's an example of one. Not sure if it's gonna make it, but just took that cutting, placed it in there over the fall, overwintered, and it's starting to pump out some new growth. Also bought some willow cuttings. I'm hoping that doesn't mess up the clay lining of the pond. The roots tend to be pretty aggressive, but they love the water, so that's a nice benefit. I have no filter in the ponds. There's no pumps, no waterfalls, etc. I know that's a bit taboo or unnormal for most people who have backyard ponds, but I'm wanting to take a more natural approach to things. And so if there is a solution that nature can provide instead of something man-made, I'm all about implementing that resource rather than something man-made. So for example, this, I mean, you could tell it's pretty green at the moment, but these, I have an oxygenating plant right here, hoping that propagates some more. There's a lot of leaf litter and stuff that falls in here. Occasionally I'll pick it out, but it's not too harmful. Adds nutrients to the pond. I don't want it to be over nutrified, but these plants around the pond do need nutrients, and so the pond is a great place to collect those nutrients, as long as the plants are pumping those nutrients back up on top and outside of the pond, then I'm happy with it. I do have some goldfish in there that are doing surprisingly well. They're keeping the mosquito populations in check. They also keep the algae somewhat in check. I do have some kind of algae blooms occasionally, so I might have to clean that out by hand, but it hasn't caused a problem in the pond as of yet. Propagating some Boston ferns here. This one seems like it's going to be successful. Sending out a few new leaves there. I propagate it, cut it back, and let it grow out again. Also, I take the approach of everything is a mulch. Everything is a fertilizer. So I don't add any artificial fertilizers, and I very rarely buy even organic fertilizers. I do bring in a lot of wood chips, as I'm sure it is obvious to a lot of you. Act as a great mulch. This is my creek system. So this is what feeds the pond. I have this connected to my downspout, so my roof water runs out through this creek. It's acted fairly well. Been slowly building it for about a year. Here's the main garden. You could see the creek continues. There's Leo, all happily foraging. They love to scratch and peck and eat the worms and the plants. If I do let them forage for too long, they can eat this area down relatively quickly, but I think we're far enough along in spring that they don't focus on the well-established plants as much. They go for the seedlings. So while I do wish more seedlings could germinate and go to maturity, my chickens also need food. I do feed them as well. Here's their coop. They got some feed in there. They got water. Got everything they need. But I like to give them natural forage as well. Oh, my creek system. So it continues up here, runs to there. There's my downspout. I know it's a bit funky, but that comes from the chicken coop and also comes from my roof right here. So roof down to the chicken coop, downspout to the creek, all the way down there to the pond. if there's a really heavy flow of water, this is an overfill. I know this looks pretty swampy right now, but that's my overfill. Any excess water runs underneath this bridge, down along this culvert, and waters this whole section of the garden. So I'm kind of contouring my land. I don't know if you could pick it up on the camera, but we have these swales that run on contour right here. I'm doing a bit of building them up rather than digging them down. I do a little bit of digging them down, but I do want to keep this grass here, even though the chickens are eating it almost to death. But it's Southern California, St. Augustine grass, so this thing's practically a weed. Here we have some orange balm, more rosemary, chia seeds. The birds love this, not just the chickens. We got some blackberry cuttings that seem to be doing well. They're already beginning to flower. A few other ones are already fruiting in another section of my garden. But yeah, these ones are sending out quite a few shoots, so I would call that a success, even if I don't get fruit this year. This is, I believe, a yasta berry. I'm not positive about that, but this is a grapevine. I built this fence just out of dead wood. It's more or less a dead hedge, and I've been weaving the grapevine in and amongst it. So I'm hoping to have that sprawl all the way throughout this fence right here. Let me zoom back. Could get a better sense of what I'm talking about. I might eventually build this fence a bit taller and have this be a nice clear boundary right there with the grapevine on it. Got some elderberry here. This was my main elderberry that I first bought that I've been chopping and propagating, and it seems to respond really well to pruning. I have here some kind of salvia, I believe. Forget the exact name of the species, but hummingbirds love it. Even some native bees like it. This is my compost area. So you kind of walk down into it. But the chickens love this area. I tend to feed them from this compost. This compost is about a year old. It started off as wood chips. And you can see all the life that's in there. I also sprout seed in there that the chickens love to get. Here comes Henny now, wanting some spaghetti, as I call it. There's Charmy. Charmy's the best at getting spaghetti. Not Charmy, I'm sorry. That's Tiny. Charmy has passed away. That's why we call this channel Charmy's Garden. I'll go and show you where Charmy's at right now. Charmy is buried underneath this rock. A hawk flew in on Thanksgiving Day when I was inside and attacked and killed Charmander. But Charmander loved eating mulberries from this tree, which we're actually getting a lot of this year. It's going to be a great year for mulberries. You can see them there. They're pretty early still. This is not my only mulberry tree. As I mentioned, artichokes that grow everywhere in this garden. This area is largely unplanted. I've scattered some seeds in here. put some cuttings in there. Quite a few mulberry trees. I think maybe 3 or 4. I'm wanting to make this a more of a visual barrier, so I don't have to see those telephone wires or the electrical wires. But I got a passion fruit growing up that fence, spreading like crazy. Gives me at least 100, if not 2 or more hundred passion fruit a year. Mostly in the spring, some in the fall. And this might look odd, but I've made this structure just out of twine. And this was my response to the hawk coming and attacking the chickens. They had no cover other than this tree, but that wasn't enough. I did prune it back so it was more overhanging before, but still wasn't enough, and the hawk got the chicken. So I figure with the hawk's wingspan, there's no way it'd be able to fly into that. And I got Leo there to protect them. There's Henny. Here's kind of a mini pond, or you could call it rain garden in here. It's hard to tell where the soil level is. I'll jump in there in a second. Got some sweet peas growing up there. Got some salvia, some milkweed, nopales, daikon, mustard, black-eyed Susan. Here's an old lemon tree that was on the property when we moved in, and it's on its way out. It still produces some, but a lot of dead and diseased branches, so I'm slowly chopping it back, and that will allow more light in for this mulberry. This was my first mulberry that I've taken cuttings from. My other mulberry is doing better than this one, just I think since it had more sunlight exposure. But once this lemon tree is chopped back and eventually gone, I think this mulberry tree will take over this space quite nicely. I have some grapevines that are just starting to sprout or shoot up new growth. Dragon fruit that's kind of just a little bit wild at this point, growing how it wants. But it succeeds. I don't get a ton of dragon fruit from it, but I'm hoping this year I get some more. I usually get at least 2 or 3 nice, big, juicy, sweet dragon fruit a year, and that's just from one plant. So I have quite a few more plants this year than last year. So I'm hoping I get more. I'll continue to propagate that. Hibiscus bush. These are my blackberries. They're somewhat taking over the hibiscus bush as well, but they're producing decently, although the birds get the blackberries usually before I can. There were some blackberries on this bramble, but birds got them. Bougainvillea chopped back not too long ago. Let me show you the pond area. So it's a bit overgrown, but I'll walk in here. There's lots of bees. So here I am standing in the rain garden. Still hard to tell, but this is exactly what I want. This is why this area is so productive, because it's a rain garden, allowing the rain to concentrate, pool up, infiltrate into the soil. I have a handful of moringa trees around the place. This one not doing too great. I'm hoping it'll survive. Planted it from seedling, from a whip. Got some golden currants right here. Supposed to do well in full sun in 10B, or 10A, 10B. It's my nopales. Got a pomegranate here. This is only its first full year. Well, I suppose, yeah, second year. So obviously no fruit. Last year it was only maybe, 6 to 8 inches. So I'd say that's doing pretty well for 1 year. Maybe I'll get some fruit this year. We'll see. This was a volunteer. I believe it is a peach tree. It's some kind of stone fruit, not exactly sure what. Grew from a pit. So I'm not expecting it to be a great producing and great tasting fruit, but I'm thinking of having it be my practice for grafting. Never gotten into grafting too much, so might as well start from a free tree. I have some bananas in here that are a couple years old, and it's a bit sad to say because they are not doing well. Still growing. I just pulled back the mulch some to check on the soil. Soil's looking really good. Nice and moist. Nice and humusy. Lots of organic matter, lots of life. So I'm not exactly sure why these bananas are not doing better than they are. But we'll see. Hopefully this year I could get some. I have some raspberries in here that don't seem to be doing great this year, but they're still around. I'm hoping they survive. Raspberries are pretty hardy, so I'm not too worried about them. Everything's kind of scattered, as you could tell. I don't plant in rows. I don't irrigate on drip. So I'm trying to take a more natural approach. Here's a guayaba tree that we planted maybe 3 years ago from cutting from a family member. And this seems to be doing really well. Last year was probably the first year that we got a decent harvest from it. Harvests around August, September, October, or something like that. But now it's growing season, so it's starting to shoot off a lot of new growth, which I'm happy about. This is a eucalyptus tree. Eucalyptus should grow very large, upwards of 50 feet. So if I stand back here, you'll get a sense of what this area might look like in 3 to 5 years. That is south facing there. So this guayaba tree is just barely reaching over the rooftop now to get sun. You can see it spreading outward quite a bit to get sun. So the eucalyptus shouldn't shade it too much, but I'm hoping it adds a nice, again, visual barrier, making this area feel more enclosed and secluded. I have mint in there. I know you're not supposed to plant mint in a bed without any lining or protection, but this has been here for 3 years and I haven't had too much issue with it. I mean, it does spread, but I keep it in check. There's so many other things planted in here that they all keep it in check as well. This is a very shady part of my garden. It only gets maybe a couple hours of sunlight in the summer and no direct sunlight for the rest of the year. So that's why this area is not as thriving as maybe some of the other areas. So personally, I think that's a great place to plant mint, even though mint loves full sun. You gotta be careful with mint. So it smells delicious. This is a grafted peach tree that I bought. Got a handful of peaches this last season. I might get some more this season. It's already coming into a decent structure. So yeah, there's a lot more to see in the garden. Let me know if you guys want to see more of something in particular, if something piqued your interest, or if you have any suggestions of things I should be doing differently. Also wanting to hear those things. So yeah, if you guys like this video, please like this video and subscribe. Thanks.